What's up, everybody? Peter X. Coffer here, and welcome to another episode of All Things Music. Today, the topic of this show is the rise and fall of music magazines. Now, there once was a time where music magazines was very big business. You'll see in a minute when I start rolling off dates, but clearly the demise of bookstores and e-readers and that kind of thing really killed magazines in general. The only one really standing left is Rolling Stone magazine, which started in 1967. So let's jump right in. Hit Parader existed from 1942 to 2008. It was sort of pop rock, but by the time I started getting Hit Parader in the late 70s, it was definitely a rock and roll, and classic rock. So it was huge. And it's, I don't know, twin competitor, whatever you want to call it, was Creem. And Creem went from 1969 to 1989. This is in the print form. Now came back in 2022 in digital form. I don't know what that means. I'm going to go snoop around and see what that, but those were huge. Those were huge for classic rock bands, and it really got you into your band. And the third one, at least in the rock sphere, was Spin, and Spin went from 1985 to 2012, and it just went online this September 2024. So those three were the big rock ones. You got to find out. I mean, remember, this is before Spin's 85, but before the internet. All three of these, this is where you got music. This is where you heard the gossip. This is kind of where you heard, hey, so and so's coming out with a new album in a month or so. These serve the function of what internet and websites, kind of do. And they were big. Spinning Gold, which is the book, I read, I think last year on, Casablanca, Kiss was Casablanca, George Clinton, P-Funk were Casablanca. So they talked about these magazines, and I'm starting with rock, but then I'll get into hip-hop and R&B, were vital in promoting new artists. And as, that's kind of gone now. And they were very vital there. It wasn't always on the up and up because, the writers of Casablanca talk about, particularly with Hit Parade, Creem, if you bought the bigger ads you bought, the better coverage and more coverage that your band got in the magazines at times. Look, I mean, the music industry is shady as fuck. Is the shadiest legal industry there is, and if you don't, if you fall asleep, you're gonna get had, took, and whatever. That's just how it is. So yeah, but again, let's get into some of the hip hop and R&B. I mean, in the African American community from 1951 to 2014, you had Jet magazine. Jet is the equivalent to Life, and I don't even know if Life still exists. It's People for Black folks, Life for People. Ebony, 1945 to 2014. Now, Ebony went digital in 2021. Owned by the same company. And then, again, there are people, I know people still in print, because I still see it, in paper form, in Life. Hip hop, the biggest one was Source. The Source was huge. 1988 to 2009. Now the source is online and they do either an annual or a semi-annual, um, edition. So, I mean, what is that? They had three, awards, back in the day, where the source awards. Emerge was, I'm trying, from 1989 to 2000. Emerge was a lot of things. It started off being owned by Time and BET, then BET bought it up. Emerge was a time with more entertainment, and particularly hip hop. And then you had Vibe from 1993 to 2014. It was mainly hip hop. So, I mean, these were important, for the hip hop. All three of those. Emerge, did I remember, Merge was a little, Rolling Stone, but a little more political. I remember they did a really hard-hitting series, because this is when the three strikes and you're out rule. Laws started getting passed in the 90s, and they went back and then looked at that. And also the disparity between cocaine sentences and crack cocaine sentences. The Merge was one of the first to really look at that issue, and finally got taken care of. I think Obama finally, did some of that. So yeah, I mean, all three of those were huge in hip hop and whatnot. Now we go to the teen mags, and these were big. I mean, back in the day, if in the 80s or 90s, if Justin Bieber hits the scene, this is where he shows up. So for the African American community, it was Right On from 1971 to 2014. Right On went online in 2016, and then Word Up was 1987 to 2014, and that was more hip hop. And then you had for all young folks, and these were teenagers, they sort of middle school and high school folks. So for, you had Black Beat and Tiger Beat, and Tiger Beat was huge. Everybody read Tiger Beat back in the day. 1965 to 2018, and those Tiger Beat went digital in 2021. So you had posters, you had stories. I mean, these were all kind of, the kind of what remains, if you want to know what these were like, think People, but instead, of the kind of celebrities that People covers for, Tiger Beat. I mean, it would have been Justin Bieber back in the day. Olivia Rodrigo would have been huge because, her debut album came out at 18. It would have, look, they'd be doing Taylor right now because Taylor has, a lot of, teens who are following her, and Black Beat would be all over Beyonce because Beyonce has still, gets love from black teens. For Hit Parader and Creem, think, and Spin's got more pop as people's, taste shifted. But, I think Creem and, Creem ended in 89 and Hit Parader ended in 2008, but they were pretty rock oriented, I think till the end. Of course, I wasn't, the last 10, 15 years, I wasn't buying them anymore because, the internet was there, but that's but think, 1980, a People magazine, but they're doing Kiss and Aerosmith and AC/DC. And probably Judas Priest at that time, is coming out, and maybe even Scorpions by that time. Think, Jet and Ebony. I mean, they did a little bit of everything. And the Source was grittier. The Source was grittier than Vibe. And Word Up, it was more, and Right On were more teen oriented, along with Black Beat. as far as the African American community. But the source was kind of different because it was, if such a thing, a gritty hip hop magazine, news magazine ever existed, it was the source. And I don't know how to explain it other than that. I mean, there is no template, kind of to the source. I mean, they would, review an album and they would get, 1 to 5 microphones. So, hey, which sort of played into the whole, the most important thing was, the rapper, their rapping style, their flow, which is, for that era, it was, now, sometimes Gen Xers come at me, about, well, so-and-so from, what you want to call the classic rap era. That's what, my cable system calls it. But, the late 80s and 90s rappers, and I'm like, well, so-and-so had the better flow. And, my rules are the rules, whether it's classic rock, funk, or pop, is great songwriting still rules today. And I think, at some point we'll probably do an episode on one of my platforms on the classic rap era. And, the flow and everything is still important, but, the bottom line is, longevity, music history, it's songwriting. That's what, stirs the drink, so to speak. Well, why were these magazines so important? Well, again, as I said earlier, pumping up and introducing new acts to the public. As I said, that October 2023 Billboard article and the record companies essentially in that article say we don't understand the algorithm for TikTok, and that's where most new acts are breaking. It's ironic that, boomers and many Gen Xers are saying, oh, the music sucks today, yada, yada, yada. Back in the day, look, the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, if a record company wanted to, whether they were good or not, wanted to break an act and get them, on the charts and on the radio, they could do it, because, you had these sets of music magazines that I just named. And, if you were a music fan, you read them, you bought and read these magazines. And, now these things there's probably 100 different websites, all over, the internet where that do bits and pieces, but they're spread out and they get little, they breadcrumb essentially. People, a small group go to this website for news, another group goes there and there and there. And, so there's no single, set, space where you get, a platform where you get, the latest music news. And so it was easier, ironically, to break, if you wanted to break, and every era has, forgettable music, and you're just like, how did they get popular? It's, back then, they could push, they could just grab an act. Yay, one of the things that is more prevalent now, but was still prevalent back then. The music industry and the labels have always been very, very much copycat. So, hey, so-and-so hit big. They sold 10 million copies of, last year they went diamond. Let me find, this is a similar group. Let me push them. More of that is happening today. And you're also getting a lot more of these albums have songs that sound very similar because they're trying to, brand off of a similar sound, number one, and hopefully keep going to that well to make money. This is certainly the most conservative era in history of the music industry because, the money's just not there anymore. 1 billion streams gets you $3 million. Michael Jackson Thriller, 40 million copies sold at $10 million. Do the math. That's $400 million. That's in 1983, $84. I mean, think about what that was worth today. I mean, so, the margins, the money just ain't there anymore. And so they're gonna, the record labels are gonna go with what they know. This today's record industry is not a function of talent. It's the function of putting the screws and straitjacketed the artists of this generation, Gen Z and millennials. I mean, yeah, but you can't blame the artists for that. You can say, oh well, they everybody's using auto-tune. Well, everybody's not using auto-tune, and it's just a tool. But anyway, I digress. The other thing that was big, when it came to pushing new artists was record stores. Traveling over the years to different university towns, most of them have used bookstores and really focus in that. I started at, Ohio State University in the fall of 1984. We had one or two used bookstores back in the day on High Street, which is the big, that's the big strip, the big commercial strip, on campus. But what High Street had was literally back in the day, they had 10, 12, 15 record stores. And, that how they merchandise artists were huge. I mean, I remember, one day walking down High Street, Sade's debut album, Diamond Life, is about to drop, and, her posters and her, pictures of her albums was in every single one of these stores. And I said, well, this woman's new, is going to hit it big, and she did, and rightfully so. Love me some Sade, but that was another way of really branding artists and getting them out there. Every mall had, a Music Land and, I forget the other one, but you had at least one, and usually two, record stores, in the 80s and 90s in the mall. So, if a record company wanted somebody to break, they paid enough money, guess what? They got those, the front windows filled up with whatever they wanted to promote, whether it was a new album or a new artist or whatever. So all of that's gone, and we're in an era now, we're sitting here now, in this, I've done a couple of episodes, here, All Things Music on Take the Throne, and we're coming to an era, and it's like, who's gonna break through next? Even, extremely gifted artists like a Post Malone is kind of trying to find his footing. Part of it is, and I'll get to this, and 3 things for the month for September. I'm going to focus on Post, but at some point his label needs to just turn him loose and let him do what he needs to do. I mean, he's extremely talented, and they keep trying to pigeonhole him. But anyway, we'll get to that. So, so a lot of, most people have probably never heard of these magazines, but they're long gone. But they were huge. They were massive. I was, doing some research, BET claims Emerge never made money. Okay, whatever. I don't, yeah, there was a lot of competition at the time, Vibe and the Source, but I know Hit Parader and Creem made a hell of a lot of money. And obviously Jet and Ebony, because they were competing, even though Emerge had its own distinct lane. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Hit Parader and Creem, and then, with the fall of bookstores and the fall of record stores, that really narrowed the the way of breaking new acts. So we're in an interesting era, and it's going to be, I'm kind of interested to see who's going to be the next uh, Drake, and coming out of this, Drake and Kendrick Lamar, particularly in hip hop, because I don't see a hair to Drake and Kendrick. I'm getting ahead of myself on but on some future episodes. But in your late 30s, that's kind of when the new folks take over and you become a legacy act, so to speak. But we're sitting here in hip hop. I mean, say what you want about Post Malone, but he's getting a lot of billion streams, and he's big. He's in that tier below Drake when it comes to pop. But I think the who's on the throne's going to change. I don't see Beyonce and Taylor Swift going anywhere. I think they're going to be there for a while. I think they have staying power. A lot of Madonna probably had more staying power than most, because she was pretty relevant from when she broke in '82 going into the mid 2000s. That's very rare. So that's what 25 years maybe. But I do think that Taylor Swift and Beyonce will have that longer trajectory. It'll be it's interesting because Kendrick and Kendrick Lamar and Drake are both 37. That's usually kind of at the age where you get replaced, and maybe that's why Kendrick decided to take a shot. But we'll see. I just don't see anybody on the come up, taking the spot, and heck, we might even see, depending on Kendrick Lamar and Drake's next albums, well, there isn't a king, who's the king of R&B right now? I mean, it's probably Chris Brown. But is that how hip hop's going to look in 5 or 6 years? I mean, who's Chris Brown's challenger? I don't know. So interesting times. But yeah, I'll revisit this topic, obviously, and I dropped a couple breadcrumbs here about some upcoming episodes. So let me hit this close. Thanks for coming through. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments, particularly, if you have some, who do you think's going to take, the crown from Drake, and you can say Drake is more pop than hip hop, but he's, the numbers don't lie, and he still does very well in hip hop, charts. But who's going to come up and knock off, Kendrick and Drake? So leave your comments, your opinions. I record as well. I have 5 albums. I record under the name Exodus, Xodus. My debut album is called Book 1. I also have 2 science fiction fantasy novels and a novella on Amazon, and I write under the name Peter Exodus O'Coffer. So thank you again for coming through, and I will see you next episode.